Today is Baladeva Pūrṇīmā, or supposed to be. I think it's Pūrṇīmā, no?
Yeah, Pūrṇīmā.
It looked Pūrṇīmā early morning. So anyway, today's Baladeva Pūrṇīmā, the appearance of Lord Balaram. So a lot of things are said about Lord Balaram. He has many pastimes. There's a lot of information. How he's the elder brother of Kṛṣṇa by about 1 year. I think about 1 year, elder brother. And their pastimes together in Vrindavan, and then their Mahabharata pastimes in Dwarka, Kurukshetra, war. Lord Balaram is there a lot in Mahabharata, a very exalted personality. Then ontologically, much is said about Lord Balaram as the first expansion of Kṛṣṇa. First expansion. And from Lord Balaram come all the other expansions, and which means all the Viṣṇu Tattvas. But there's an order. First Balaram, then there's what's called the catur-vyuha. The first catur-vyuha, which is Saṅkarṣaṇa, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vāsudeva. And from that Saṅkarṣaṇa, there's another catur-vyuha. This happens 3 or 4 times. It gets extremely complicated. Then begin the Viṣṇu avatars like Mahavishnu, Kṛṣṇa Viṣṇu, Garbhodakṣaya Viṣṇu. The Viṣṇu is related to creating this world. And all the avatars that come to this world are passing down in that way, except for a very few. For example, Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is not an avatar that descends to the world through after the multiples of the catur-vyuha and then the Mahavishnu and like that. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes direct from Goloka. Goloka and Navadvip Dham. Direct. Not coming through Balaram and coming through the catur-vyuha expansion. Another would be, of course, Radharani. When Radharani comes in Krishna Lila, everybody in Krishna Lila is coming direct. After that, they're coming first through Balaram. It's like in government agency, you have some order from the prime minister, and then you have his cabinet, and then some delegated power, and it comes all the way down to the Tahsildar right here in Srirangapatna. That's some representation. But there's some structure above that, some pyramid structure that comes to one. So the one that comes to first is Kṛṣṇa. Then Kṛṣṇa expands as Baladeva. Then everything begins to get manifested after that. That includes Ananta. That includes the universes, creation, all these things. Directly, Kṛṣṇa is not involved with his various avatars, except Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and maybe some other rare occasion. And he's not directly involved in the creation. Like once somebody in Vrindavan came to me and he said he was all worried. He was really disturbed. And I said, why? What's the problem? He said, well, what was he saying? He went somewhere and he was in Vrindavan and he, had this horrible thought. Oh, Kṛṣṇa, I'd like to strangle my wife. He was having some trouble with his wife and he had this thought, like, I'd just like to strangle this lady, So then he came to me, he was really worried that, Lord Balaram might answer that prayer. Or Kṛṣṇa might answer that prayer. And I said, well, first off, I'll tell you, whatever it is you're having with your wife, good time or bad time, Kṛṣṇa is not interested one way or the other. He's not connected to the trivial problems of this world. So he didn't hear your prayer. If you want to pray to Kṛṣṇa, it's got to be about something of a higher class that he's going to be interested in. And that's not one of the things, the troubles of this world, the petty troubles of this world. But he was believing in one side the potency in Vrindavan and Krishna's there, but I've had this thought, now what if Krishna fulfills my thought, then there's going to be a problem, how can I retract that? And I said, you don't have to worry, because he didn't even hear it. He's not concerned with that level of things. Once in Nairobi, I was doing an artik at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the bell was broke. So there was no ringing going on. Well, usually this Indian gentleman would come every morning for that artik. He would just show up, he had his driver get out of his car, he'd come in, he'd be standing there. I'd be about as far as that bookstand away, standing inside the rope doing the artik, and he'd be doing something, By the time the artik was over, he'd be gone. Well, that day the artik bell didn't ring, it wasn't ringing. And I could hear what he was saying. He was Gujarati, but maybe because he was in a Saib temple, he thought God spoke English and not Gujarati. So he was offering his prayers in English. And he was praying for an import license. An import license. He was praying to Krishna for an import license. This was in Nairobi. So he needed some license to import. What did Mrs. Piyush say that one day? Oh, you please bless my son,
Mrs.
Piyush. Mrs. Javeri said, you please bless my son Piyush that he will score high on his examination. And I said, it's like this. You study, you smart, you score high. You're not studied, you're not that smart, you score low. Krishna has nothing to do with your scores on your examination. He was trying to enter some college and he needed high mark to pass something.
She also asked you, please bless Piyush, he won't die.
Oh yeah. And then she also asked, please bless him that nothing will happen to him. And he will not die. I said, this is impossible. Something happens to everybody. Everybody, something's happening all the time. And death is as natural as birth.
You said, he'll die, but don't worry, you'll be dead long before him.
Something like that, I remember that. So okay, that's some piety. People approach Krishna for different things. But he doesn't hear those things. He's beyond those things. He's not concerned directly with anything in this world. Anything. You have your problems, and you have your good times, you have your wealth, and you have your poverty, all these things. Krishna is not concerned with those things at all. Yet some people think that money is a sign of Krishna's mercy. Mm-hmm. But look around the world, the richest people don't even believe in Krishna. So what's he doing? He's giving all the money to people who don't even believe in him or never even heard about him. That's not that they don't believe, they never even heard about him. Rich people, so much wealth in the world. Then you read the Shastras. How many wealthy devotees do you find in Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Bhagavatam, or any Puranas? And the answer is very rare or none. King Kulashekar. He was a great king in South India, so obviously he was very rich. But he didn't become famous as a king. He became famous because he gave it all away to become a devotee of Krishna. And therefore he's remembered King Kulashekar. He's not remembered King Kulashekar, who had all the big treasury and all the beautiful dancing girls in his court and all the pundits sitting around. That's not the Kulashekar that's famous. The Kulashekar who gave the money away. But at the time he was a devotee and he was wealthy. But these are very rare. Most of the times devotees are average economics in the world, or less, or lower. That's average. And it's sometimes a mistake for a devotee to try and make a lot of money. Because first we make the choice, we're going to be devotee. But then we want to make some money for the ashram, so we want to make money. But there's a problem there. People get lost in that, and they want to make too much money, and it interferes with their spiritual life. This happens not once, twice. This has happened hundreds of times in the world, in the modern world, and back in the day also, way back 100 years ago. It's always happened. Money is required, but not so much. We think, oh, if I had so many crores, then we'd be happy. But I've seen money ruin people's lives. I've seen people inherit 8 crores and 4 years later be 2 crores in debt. From 8 crore, they went down to be 2 crores in debt. This was in US, it was in dollars. The man got 10 crores, and 4 years later he was $500,000 in debt. He got $2.5 million donated, not donated, he inherited, and he doesn't know how to manage money. He ends up $500,000 in debt. Plus, money destroys family, money destroys relations. So money has nothing to do with the mercy of Kṛṣṇa. But what does is, if you find that you have a perpetual interest in any of the aspects of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, any of them, maybe the chanting, maybe the seva, cooking, maybe the puja, it may be the shastra, or it may be as simple a thing as a company of devotees. Attraction to the things which are related to Kṛṣṇa, and to Kṛṣṇa himself, and to the holy name of Kṛṣṇa, particularly to the holy name of Kṛṣṇa, that is a sign that we have Kṛṣṇa's mercy. There's also like 2 types of like, I'm very fallen, and I can't go on anymore in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. This feeling is there, of 2 types. One guy has the feeling, another guy has the same feeling. Basically, if you recorded them, they're saying the same things. I'm very fallen, I can't go on in spiritual life. And one of them doesn't go on. He quits. He gets a job in a meat restaurant. He marries a non-devotee. He does whatever. He completely goes away from Kṛṣṇa. The other one doesn't stop trying. Doesn't stop trying. He may be fallen, it may be difficult, but again he tries, and again he tries. That person is still blessed by Kṛṣṇa. That person has still got sukriti, and got some sukriti, some value to his credit. The other person has maybe lost his faith, lost his sukriti, committed aparadhas, different things that manifest as anarthas, which manifest as no interest in Kṛṣṇa, no interest in the things related to Kṛṣṇa, no interest in being with devotees, no interest in chanting the holy name, or any of the aspects. The money isn't on the list. That, he has the money, that means he has the blessing of Kṛṣṇa. Nothing to do with Kṛṣṇa. Maybe it has something to do with Lakshmi. Maybe. But not Kṛṣṇa. Rather, money is always mentioned as, hey, be careful, money. Nadanam, najanam, nasundarim. Nadanam means the money. Mahaprabhu says, don't be after the money. Be careful about the money. So when money comes, spend it all for Kṛṣṇa. Particularly if you're a sannyasi. And if you're a brahmachari, you don't even spend it for Kṛṣṇa, you just give it to me. That's real brahmachari. Brahmachari doesn't even have money to spend for Kṛṣṇa. But yet in this modern world, you'll see brahmacharis, sometimes they'll come here. From our neighbors, ISKCON, they'll pull up in a fancy car with a driver wearing all nice silks with little gold buttons and a briefcase and a little eye nano buds stuck in their ear. And they got a huge program, a big bank balance. A bank balance more than this whole ashram put together. And they're wearing saffron dress. Now, this is a good business in Hindustan. Being a sadhu, putting the dress, learning a few slokas. This is a good cheating business. Many people become crorepati on crorepati. Crores of crores do this cheating business in Hindustan. In the rest of the world, it doesn't work so good. If you want to be a cheater, you got to find some other line of work. But in India,
Catholicism.
Yeah. But in India, a good cheating business is to be a sadhu. But not a real sadhu. Some like Bollywood fashion sadhu, and then cheat the people and collect money because people are sentimental. They're just prone to, they see this color, they see certain features like Viṣṇu Mahārāja's nice white beard, and that's it. That's sadhu, that's come on the feet, right? So anyway, the point is that Kṛṣṇa is not involved directly with this material world, only on the exception of his devotee. And that doesn't mean just every devotee. That means Kṛṣṇa's pure devotee. Those who are deeply in love with Kṛṣṇa, or deeply surrendered to Kṛṣṇa, who are fully just fulfilling Kṛṣṇa's will, nothing else. Kṛṣṇa is always with that person, always conscious of that devotee, where he is. I am his heart, Kṛṣṇa says, he is my heart. Some slokas there like that. The heart of the devotee is Kṛṣṇa, the heart of Kṛṣṇa is his devotee. Primarily, the heart of Kṛṣṇa means Srimati Radharani, the greatest of devotees. But when thinking of Kṛṣṇa in this world, then the super soul of the non-devotee is this Paramatma, this Paramatma with 4 arms, and living in, is that the Dhruva-loka? That's where in the Dhruva-loka. We're looking for the North Star, remember that? That's the Dhruva-loka. The Paramatma resides there. But in Kṛṣṇa's confidential devotees, or pure devotees, Paramatma doesn't reside, Kṛṣṇa himself resides. Understand? Not the Paramatma, but Kṛṣṇa himself resides. But for everything else, Kṛṣṇa is distant from this world. He is not involved, he doesn't cause anyone to suffer, and he doesn't favor someone that in any way. He has no favorite race of people. Like in India, there's a little bit of thinking that, okay, you must be born in India, be Indian. What's India? What's an Indian? 1937, if you're from Lahore, you're an Indian. 1957, if you're from Lahore, you're a Paki. So what's India? What is that? What does it mean to be born in India? And if you go back to Mahabharata, well, Afghanistan is part of India. Gandhari comes from Gandhar, Afghanistan. Sakuni and all those people, they were Afghans. And if you go back before that, it goes up to Kazakhstan and up into Siberia. And what was India? At a time, it reached all the way to the Caspian Sea. It included Iran, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all that big thing that is long gone to Islam. That was part of pre-Rig Veda India, before Rig Veda was written down. It's way back there. So what is India? In fact, India is not even a Sanskrit word. Remember? Did you read the article in last month's Gaudiya? It's not even a Sanskrit word. It's a bastardized word, they call it. Anglicized word. It's not a Sanskrit word. It comes from the word Sindhu, which become Hindu, which become Indu, which become Indica, which become India. So, they're changing Bangalore to Bengaluru, Mangalore to Mangaluru. Everybody's got their, what's Mysore? Mysuru, everything. Then, what about India? This is also a name given by the British. Understand? It's not. And in the Constitution of India, you know what it says? It says Bharat. It says India, parentheses, Bharat. And it's there on the money too. If you look, it says it. It says Bharat, and then it says India. But India is not a translation of the word Bharat, Bharata. It's not a translation. It's 2 different words from 2 different origins. So the Vedic, or the old name of India, is Bharat, not India. So when I was saying that to some friends from Mumbai recently, some class people, and I was pointing it out that they're changing all these names, and you could see that, Bombay become Mumbai, come back to our original, what we are. Then I said, what about India? This is not the name of actual India, this is also thing. Then they were like, oh, what is the use? What does it matter? You're going to have to change the name of the country also. So for the people who don't like English signs, unless they have some Kannada on them, they come and scratch up the sign. Well, next time you're talking to one of those guys, tell them about the name of India. It's not Indian. It's not Sanskrit. It's not. It's totally Greek and English. So, we were going to read something here about Lord Balaram. I assume that we will, right? We'll continue to read. But this is a little more headweight than what I've been talking. So basically, Giri, you read out loud. Everyone, you try to listen. This is some information on Lord Balaram involving his position in relation to Kṛṣṇa, even his Rasa Leela, Yogamāyā, his energy. Is Subhadrā mentioned here?
Yeah.
Subhadrā, the sister of Balaram and Kṛṣṇa, also mentioned here. So a little bit of technical. So we'll just listen to the whole thing. It's 2 pages. And we may have some talk on that, maybe, or some questions, if there are any questions.
So devotee asks Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja, does Lord Balaram expand himself into the form of the Dham? Is Vaikuntha Dham an expansion of Lord Balaram? Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja replies, it is Lord Balaram's representation in the form of Saṅkarṣaṇa. Lord Balaram himself is in Goloka, and his Vaibhav, extended or delegated self, is in Vaikuntha. Devotee, and he himself expands in the Goloka Dhāma? Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja, yes, Goloka Vrindavan is all his expansion. But there...
Okay, let's stop space at a time. 2 things are... The thing is being asked is, Lord Balaram, does he expand the energy that makes Vaikuntha? And Śrīdhara Mahārāja said, yes, he does, but not as Balaram, as Saṅkarṣaṇa. Because Balaram is not in Vaikuntha, Balaram's in Goloka. So from Saṅkarṣaṇa, the Vaikuntha is expanded. Saṅkarṣaṇa is a Viṣṇu Tattva. Keep that in mind. Balaram's the first Viṣṇu Tattva. Whereas Shaktis like Radharani, Lakshmis, Jivas were not Viṣṇu Tattva. They're different types of Shaktis. We're not Viṣṇu Tattva. The catur-vyuha, that is. And Saṅkarṣaṇa, that's that. So then the devotee asks, well, what about Goloka? The forest, where does this all come from? Is this an expansion of Balaram? Does he expand, is he the one who expands the Dham? Means Goloka Dhāma. And Śrīla Mahārāja is saying, yes, he expands. Another time, some other places, Ananta is drawn in. That this material, is it the Vaikuntha or the material world is expanding from Ananta-śeṣa. Holds up the material world, sustains the material world. Okay. So did you follow that? Balaram manifests the Dham, the paraphernalia, to serve Kṛṣṇa in Goloka, and Saṅkarṣaṇa manifests that in Vaikuntha. Okay? So here in the temple, a practical example is, you have Kṛṣṇa on the altar, Jagannath, etc., in the Sringa. You have all this stuff sitting in front of him. Stuff, ghee lamps, you have deepam, the deepams, you have achmans, you have all this stuff, and offering plates, and all this stuff. So what is that stuff? That is considered the manifestation of Ananta-śeṣa, Ananta. It is not something from Loe Bazaar. It's not something from HNK Goda. That may be where you found it, but when it comes to be engaged in Krishna's service, it becomes transformed. It is no longer now just a ghee lamp from the brass market or the antique store, or something some Brahmin gave the temple as a gift. Now it becomes Ananta. The paraphernalia to serve Krishna is considered Ananta. So in some forms of puja, none that I've ever done, but some that I've seen done and some that I've heard about, before doing the puja of Krishna with the deepam, first there's the puja for the deepam, because the deepam is Ananta. And that's just not some plucked flower out of the garden and offered to Krishna. No, that paraphernalia, that dish the flowers on, that is Ananta. And that expands to the temple and anything in the immediate kshetra of the deity. the deity clothing, all these things are considered to be manifestations of Ananta. So when we dispose of these things, there's supposed to be some consciousness involved. You don't just take things that were used for serving Kṛṣṇa and throw in the trash. Say they're broken, or incense burned, the deity's dress, different things. Well, then it becomes what's called like prasadi. By association of Kṛṣṇa, it comes out from the service. It's not Ananta anymore, right? But now we just say prasadam, deity prasadam. Is the word prasadi?
Prasadi.
Prasadi, because it was in connection to Kṛṣṇa. Now it has come back to our hand, and now it is prasadam. And then, of course, there's the practical sense. If you have a whole bunch of broken brass, yes, then you can have that melted down, have that sold, and get something in exchange for it. But generally, things that are come in connection to Kṛṣṇa, you don't just throw in the trash. There's a way to dispose of that. Like flowers and organic things can be thrown on the ground and stuff like that, or in the river. And there's this one, there was many incidents. There's this one particular incident in Los Angeles, which is one of the biggest cities of the world. There are laws about everything, including even spitting. What to speak of dumping a big pot of rice and dal into a river because the prasadam was bad, you see? But that's what the devotees used to do. After feasts, sometimes there would be a large amount, and it would go bad. They would take it in the night to this one river that ran through Los Angeles, and then go out on the bridge and dump the pot of rice and stuff down into the river. Think, oh, the fish are going to get prasadam and everything. Well, one day, woo, 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 in the middle of the night, the red light, the blue light pulls up with the loudspeaker, and the cops with the shotguns and the dogs get out of the car. And there's a devotee with all shaved up, tilak, dumping, and the police are outraged at how you could dump your garbage into a river right here in the middle of this city. And the devotee is saying, it's not garbage, it's prasadam. Tell that to the judge, you know, and that's what the policeman said. Tell that to the judge, and gave him about a $500 fine. So, but here, we don't have that issue of SWAT team surveilling the area, and flowers, organic things that come from Kṛṣṇa, and things that will sink and never be seen again, go to the river. Rivers, oceans are standard places for taking different types of prasadam and disposed of it like that. Or around plants and stuff like that. But this question came up before. I've talked about this before. From the kitchen, you say you may have some prasadam that went bad, so you take it out on the edge of the garden and just dump it in the weeds, because the animals are going to eat it and stuff like that, and the ants are going to eat it. They're going to get prasadam. But then, it so happens that prasadam grows, and a tomato plant grows. And you walk down there 90 days later, and here's a big tomato plant with all these nice tomatoes hanging on it. Now the question is, are those tomatoes prasadam? Because they grew from the seeds of prasadam. This is a legitimate question. It's come up more than once in the world, for sure. You know. Okay, so is that tomato prasadam? It's not prasadam. What do you say, Shamasundar? It's not prasadam. Oh my God. Okay.
Not sure.
Not sure. I'm weakening them. Is that tomato prasadam?
Prasadam?
The tomato that grew, you threw the prasadam out in the grass, and one tomato grew from the prasadam and the plant, and it gave new tomatoes. Are the new tomatoes prasadam? You'll wait for the answer. Anuradha? No, not prasadam. Jagdishwar?
No.
Not prasadam. Not prasadam. It's not prasadam. So, why is it not prasadam? And what's an example?
Because it goes to different hands.
The son of a Brahmin is not automatically a Brahmin until he's educated. The son of a goldsmith is not a goldsmith until he learns how to make gold. The son of an executive is not an executive unless he learns to be an executive. You see? So the father of the tomato plant had been prasadam, but the son was born from the seeds, not yet prasadam. Another thing is, devotees used to think, that, and you'd run across this, everything in Vrindavan is prasadam. Right? And that was a great excuse to go down to the sweet stall and just eat all you wanted. But usually, then loose motion and vomiting, we would say this is also prasadam in Vrindavan. Everything is prasadam. So if that's true, then there's nothing to offer to Kṛṣṇa. If everything is already prasadam in Vrindavan, then how we can offer anything to Kṛṣṇa? We don't offer Krishna's mercy to Kṛṣṇa. You know? We offer bhog, or prepared nivedyam is the old word. That's for the offering, right? Nivedyam. And then after the nivedyam, there's prasadam. Well, we don't offer prasadam to Kṛṣṇa. So everything in Vrindavan is not Krishna's mercy. It is Krishna's mercy in the sense that it exists as part of the Dham, but to be offered to Kṛṣṇa. You know, it is there to be offered to Kṛṣṇa. So, okay, so yes, Lord Balaram does expand the Dham, Goloka Vrindavan. Saṅkarṣaṇa expands the Vaikunthas.
Golok Vrindavan is Balaram's expansion, but there he's always active through his expansion as the underground sandhīni, unifying potency.
So there's three main potencies, and we're not going to get much into that because I don't hold all that in my forefront memory. It's called sandhīni, samvit, sandhīni, and lhādinī. These are the three divisions of the spiritual potency of Kṛṣṇa, of the spiritual energy. This is a very technical point, but it's something, if you are more conscious reader and studying, it's definitely something to look at and pay attention to and study. So here it is saying that that creation is going on by Balaram, but again, not directly. He does not have to labor to create something. It's all going on in the background. Or how is he saying? He's saying Balaram's in the background?
He's saying he's always active through his expansion as the underground sandhīni, unifying potency.
Yeah. Sandhīni. So in the spiritual world, everything happens automatically. There is no endeavor. In this world, no endeavor, nothing happens. You're too tired to get out of bed? Then you don't get out of bed. You don't get out of bed automatically. You're too tired to do something? You don't get the result. You're too tired to eat? Your stomach doesn't get full. In this world, nothing happens without endeavor. We have to endeavor 24 hours a day, every day of our life. Everything is about endeavor. But in Goloka, the Supreme Lord doesn't have to endeavor. He doesn't have to endeavor to manifest the world. Balaram, he's manifesting the Dham, but he doesn't have to endeavor to do that. Understand? In other words, there's no work on his part. The Supreme Lord has no work. Yet everything, he's the cause of everything. But he has no work. It simply happens. Quicker than a thought, before a thought even occurs, it just happens. His energies, all the energies are serving Kṛṣṇa. All the energies are serving the Supreme Lord. And they are carrying out everything. So Balaram is also Kṛṣṇa, manifestation of Kṛṣṇa, once removed. So he also serves Kṛṣṇa. But in relation to doing this work, there are energies that serve Lord Balaram. It's not that he has to go out in some environmental capacity as an engineer and figure out how to make a nice forest to accommodate today's pastimes of Kṛṣṇa, how to create various situations. It just happens automatically.
His Madhura Rasa is passive. In Goloka, Radharani's Vaibhav is having full play, and Balaram's potency is there passively as Yogamāyā. Balaram and Yogamāyā are of a similar function. Both of them combined are conducting the arrangements at the stage for Krishna's pastimes. Devotee: Maharaj, what is the position of Subhadrā? Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja: her position is not in Vrindavan but in Dwarka. The Subhadra in Jagannath Dham is Arjuna Patni, the wife of Arjuna and sister of Kṛṣṇa. She is within Dwarka Leela and has nothing to do with Vrindavan. Besides this, there is another Subhadra who is one amongst the many Sakhis of Radharani in Vrindavan. She is called Bhadra or Subhadra. Devotee: is it Dwarka Subhadra who is also sometimes referred to as Yogamāyā? Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja: no.
So there's an interesting article in this new edition of the Gaudiya called The Case of Subhadra. Now, this is very interesting, and it came up last year when, in Kartik or just before Kartik?
Before Kartik, yeah.
I think
Janmashtami. It's actually
around,
this time Janmashtami.
Yeah, Janmashtami came up because we found two contradictory statements. One where Prabhupada says Subhadra is Yogamāyā, another where Śrīdhara Mahārāja says she's not Yogamāyā. So this was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. There's something to look up here. So we had to look at it from every level. First off, let's see if somebody made a mistake when they were transcribing what Śrīdhara Mahārāja was saying. So we go back, find that tape, etc., find other references. No, that was his opinion. Then look it up what Prabhupada was talking about Yogamāyā. Yep, that's what he said. So two different opinions about a singular point. So it appeared. But as it ends up, they're not talking about a singular point, because Subhadra isn't a singular identity. When you think, as I'm talking about Subhadra, those who have some background remember Krishna's appearance and the sister that was born along with Kṛṣṇa in the chastisement of Kamsa. Then the next thing you remember is Krishna married Arjuna married Subhadra. And then the next thing you think of is Subhadra in terms of Jagannath. Oh, but these are not all three the same. There's differences. So I'm not going to tell that whole story, but there's a whole article in the new magazine, The Case of Subhadra. So we took it as a case and analyzed all the aspects and everything, and wrote to some other members also of our sampradaya who are friends, and gathered some very interesting information, which included a quote from this, right?
This is quoted.
Yeah, which is, this particular part is quoted in the article. So it's a really good read to understand who is Subhadra, and when you say Subhadra, who are you actually talking about? It's very interesting.
At the time when I was composing Prapanna Jivanamrita, I was faced with the position of having to think very deeply on this point. What is the relation between Baladeva and Yogamāyā? Then, although I did not find it anywhere in the scriptures, I discovered within myself that Baladeva must be the master of Yogamāyā. That is, after analyzing the spiritual environment of their pastimes, I came to the conclusion that they must have some connection.
So this is the character also, the quality of Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja. Śrīdhara Mahārāja was a very advanced devotee. In a word, we say paramahaṁsa. It means the first class, highest type, self-realized devotee. He also had the title, which was bestowed to him, or which spoke a little bit about his character, called Shastra Nipunj. Shastra Nipunj in Bengali, I guess, means who's expert in the Shastra. But repeatedly, in Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja's life, he would encounter something in his thinking, about like, who is Subhadra, or who is Balaram, or what is their position, something. And although he had a lot of scripture at his facility, at his use, he can use, still you have to look through every page and look for something in relation to what he was thinking. Well, this wasn't always possible. Today we have this facility of a folio. We can look up something and find out everything Baladeva said about it, Śrīdhara Mahārāja said about it, Bhaktivinoda said about it, the Vedas said about it. We can just find this. Well, that's really nice. Well, in the old days, the way the kings and people used to do this, big like ashrams were really into the study. They'd say, okay, Jagadishwar, you take the first 6 chapters of the Gita, and that's just, you just stick with that. You just over and over. You the second 6, you the third 6. Divide the Bhagavatam up, and they'd have like 100 pundits, and all their main scriptures would be divided up. And the king or the head Brahmin or priest, Swami or whoever this would go, I need a quote about, the lhādinī potency of Bhagavan, right? Well, you look and you go, don't have it here. It's not in the first 6 chapters of the Gita, because you know that by heart. And all of a sudden the guy that knows, oh yeah, that's such Bhagavatam section, he just, pop, he's got the answer within minutes. That's how it worked. They would divide everything up, and you would be expert in one small area, and that's too small, and you in another and another. And then when I asked the question, then whoever's book was in, who was responsible for that study, he just popped right up with the answer. Take away that and just leave one person with all the books. Shoot, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of information. Which raised the point recently while reading Bhaktivinoda. He's saying so many things. It's just like, when did he have time to go study all the Shastras to this? He went to school. He went to a Christian college and school. He was a school teacher. When he got out, he had a family. He had 13 kids. He worked a full-time job. When did he have time to go studying all this stuff? And then tell us in relation to what he studied. The fact was, he wasn't studying hardly any of the things. Studying? He wasn't studying. Everything was coming down through him. He's a giver. He's a giver of these things, not a studier of these things. We're different. We're studying these things. We're studying what the Acharya said. We're trying to get the information from Vaikuntha, from Goloka, that will awaken us and we'll understand what is Kṛṣṇa, what are the pastimes, all the different intricacies, or things like that. There, he is giving this. He is not studying this and then repeating it. It's coming to us from him. Otherwise, there's no explanation how he could know so much and be so broad in his speaking on so many topics so quickly, even before he had a guru. In fact, didn't he write this before?
Kṛṣṇa Samhita was written before.
Yeah, he wrote Kṛṣṇa Samhita before he was even in the Sampradaya. So that ought to tell you who's at the door. And so, I think these recent events have come up to like help us to remember Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, kind of just sliding back a photo, a few songs we sing. Oh, Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura is 1,000 times more than that. He's not just someone in the past Sampradaya who wrote a few songs. No. He did all that and more. And of a quality that is just an absolute miracle. And that's why some intelligent persons considered him to be the 7th Goswami. Where'd the 7 Goswamis get all this information? Yes, it says they were learned, but in different Puranas and things, particularly Jiva Goswami. But they are the people of that world. And therefore, very easily they understand it. And without even reading about it, they can tell you about it because that's where they come from. It's like if you want to ask, me something about Hawaii or Jagadishwar something about Santa Rosa or Colorado, because he comes from there, because I come from there, very easy, I can tell you. But if you just go read a book about these places, you can also get a certain amount of knowledge, right? But overall, there'll be something lacking. And the lacking is the experience or the realization. So they're coming with the experience, and we're trying for the realization. We're trying to enter. And really, realization means the ability to appreciate what's being given, what Kṛṣṇa is given. The ability to appreciate that. That in itself is self-realization. It's not. Well, so what does it mean to realize it? If we say something, what's something we can say that? That Srimati Radharani is the dearmost consort of Kṛṣṇa. So this is a very high knowledge. So then, how can you realize that? What does it mean to realize that? You already know it now. You already got the knowledge. Now the Vijñāna. What is the Vijñāna on that point? Well, some people think, well, it would mean to actually see Radha and Kṛṣṇa, and then see that all other potencies were in the shadow of both Radha and Kṛṣṇa. They had no light to bear there, or something like that. And that may be. But first, it means to have an appreciation for that, to develop an appreciation. And an appreciation that has a feeling with it, a feeling appreciation for the simple information that Radharani is the supreme consort of Kṛṣṇa. So appreciation is self-realization. If we can appreciate any aspect of the higher realm, then that is part of self-realization. And if we have no appreciation, then we have no realization. Is it possible that you have no appreciation for something, but you have a realization of it? No, appreciation precedes realization. Or they're simultaneous. There's one place where Srila Prabhupada says, and this extols the glories of appreciation, he says that one can easily go back to home, back to Godhead, by performing Sankirtan. But if one cannot perform Sankirtan, he's talking about the Sankirtan movement, if one can appreciate how others are performing, by that appreciation one can go back to Godhead. So the power of appreciation is never to be undermined. And lack of appreciation is the worst of worst. When we lose our appreciation. And there's a story from Mahabharata, it's called the Ungrateful Man. It's a story of a man whose life was saved by a crane, the king of the cranes. But the man and not only his life was saved, but he came to great fortune by the blessing of the crane. But then he returned and later killed and ate the crane. I mean, this guy is the lowest of the low. And in the end of the story, the guy gets killed, punished, he gets killed. And the Rakshasas then, who generally eat human flesh, they decide, oh, this guy's so low, we'll just give him to the cannibals in some lower caste of junglis. So they produce the body. The king sends his men, they give the body. This is in Mahabharata. He gives the body of this dead man. So the king sends this body, you can feast. So the Adivasi, the junglis, they're thinking, well, the king, he's Rakshasa, he's also eating. Why he's not eating this? Then they said, what's the story of this man? And when they heard the story of this man, who was so ungrateful that he killed the very person, the king of the cranes, king of the birds, who bestowed great wealth and fortune. When he was so ungrateful, they said, no, we do not eat the flesh of an ungrateful man. So ingratitude is the lowest thing that there is, just about, ingratitude. And gratitude and appreciation just precedes and is part of self-realization. There's no question of self-realization without appreciation. So, where are we now?
Śrīla Śrīdhara is talking about Yogamāyā and Baladeva. They are both making arrangements for Kṛṣṇa Lila, so their relationship must be very intimate. Yogamāyā must be in the position of the wife of Balaram. This conclusion came to me, and then later on I found that Jiva Goswami has also expressed such opinion, that Yogamāyā and Baladeva are very close and similar.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, what happens is Shastra comes along not to give the higher devotee his realization, but to verify it. In other words, he has this feeling, he has no proof. He look in the Shastra, he can't find anything. He has this feeling, this conception, Śrīla Mahārāja's higher thinking. So he concludes this, that this must be then later he finds in the writing of Jiva Goswami a confirmation of that. You follow? There's a difference. There's a complete difference.
Also, Vrindadevi's nature and conduct is of a very similar nature to them in this respect. Yogamāyā,
Vrindadevi.
Vrindadevi. Yogamāyā is in the inner circle, the Shakti position, and Balaram is in the outer or male circle, the second layer. But in the center is only Kṛṣṇa, feeling his own ecstasy. When extension begins, we find that Balaram and Yogamāyā make arrangements for that transaction of Kṛṣṇa, where Rasamrita Murti, Kṛṣṇa, the embodiment of all rasa, tastes himself. Rasa is tasting himself. It is different in the case of the mundane rasa, where the soul is the subject and the rasa is an object to be enjoyed by him. But here, rasa is himself the highest subject and he is tasting himself. He then gradually extends himself, and so we find Baladev, who is a facsimile of Kṛṣṇa. But because in the science of rasa, Baladev's direct approach to Madhura rasa is not admissible, he extends himself as a special potency, Yogamāyā, and goes to perform in that Madhura rasa. Another representation or delegation of Baladev is Ananga Manjari, the younger sister of Srimati Radharani. It is found that Baladev, as Ananga Manjari, participates there in the service of Yogamāyā, in the service of Radharani, whereas the external management is in the hands of Yogamāyā.
So, here's a peculiar question, where questions, I feel like, now the question is detrimental. I encourage questions. In fact, when I travel, all the classes, everything I give when I'm in the West, it's all based on questions. No questions, no classes. It's based on questions. But at a time, there can also be inappropriate questions based on the time or circumstances. And there can also then become a level of questioning where the very question and the answer that you seek is detrimental. Because it should not be asked. The question should not be asked. And the example is, so let's think, there's Balaram. Now, Balaram has his representation. What's that mean? As Radharani's sister. That's what was said, right? So what tattva is Radharani's sister? Balaram is Viṣṇu tattva. Is she Viṣṇu tattva? Which tattva is she? I want to know. So I feel, because I've looked at this question for 20 years, that there's a line there that says, this question is irrelevant. It is too many questions. Too much desire to know. It is beyond your conception. She is simply the representative of Balaram. Balaram's representation. His participation in Madhurya Ras is through Radharani's sister. But then to ask, well, is she what? She's Radharani's sister. Well, I want to know which tattva she is. Is she Baladev Tattva? And I don't think anybody will go one step farther and then go in and try to tell something about the tattva, because there, the beauty of the whole thing starts to get lost. The charm starts to get stepped on by Gyan. So Gyan retires. We're not interested. We want to know all these little details.
In the
And it's quite mystical. Balaram doesn't have access in Madhurya, what's called Madhurya Ras, doesn't have access there. But through Ananga Manjari, his representation. What does that mean? Representation, she reporting back to him, writing letters and say, okay, this is what's happening, keeping him updated like that. He gets emails, I don't know. What does that mean, representation? In the other way, we're looking on the other side, Saṅkarṣaṇa, and the representation of Balaram, that means he's Viṣṇu Tattva, is like an expansion out of the body of Balaram or something like that. But about Ananga Manjari, I think there's where the questions stop. You're not supposed to ask those kind of questions. So for those who are more hung up on knowledge, then that seems outrageous. Why? I have a question. Over-intelligent question. Question is not necessary. Questions are not supreme. They must serve a purpose. And at a point, the question may be discarded or unnecessary. I'll give you another example. Once Śrīdhara Mahārāja himself was asking Bhaktisiddhanta about his initiation, which was, in those days, controversy. Some people were saying he never was really initiated. It's a thing against Bhaktisiddhanta. And they dealt with that, and certainly he was initiated by Goloka Dhāma and everything like that, and that was accepted. Well, Śrīdhara Mahārāja once, when sitting with his guru and talking to him, he started asking him some particulars, like, well, which mantras did you get when you were initiated? We'd have to look that up in the folio, but at a particular point, Śrīdhara Mahārāja felt that the very nature of his inquiry was now becoming intrusive. It was no longer serving the purpose of inquiry. You can see that in relations, family, friends, business, everything. There's just a certain thing where you're asking a question and you take it one step further about the guy's wife, their divorce or something. It's just like, oops, don't want to go there. Just forget that question, back up one, and hey, look over there, and go focus to something else. Understand? Questions don't just always go to a good place. So, and the nature of the subject is non-different than the subject. We're talking about, say, Krishna's Leela. Well, Bhaktisiddhanta used to say, those who are neophyte, when they inquire about that Leela, are creating an interference in the Leela. What's that mean? That means the subject matter is absolute. And an improper approach to the subject can be an offense, creating a disturbance in the Leela. Of course, it doesn't really get to disturb because it's blocked out. And those who are perpetual offenders, they get the inspiration to live in the fool's paradise. Those are the Sahajis. And they think they're enjoying and talking about Krishna Leela 24/7, and everything is in their pocket. They know everything and everything. And they are very fired up. They're more fired up than you who are on the right path. Because the right path means some hardship, some tapasya, sometimes some disappointment. But the path that the fools are on is just filled with successes, happiness, enjoy rasa, it's prema, it's rasa, it's rasic. And they have no tapas. They have no disappointment, no hardship. Because they live in the fool's paradise. But those who are on the right path experience difficulties. They experience doubt. They experience many things that are negative that they have to conquer on the way. But the Sahajiyas, they never complain about any of that. Their whole thing is just get up and get into the ras, or they'll have something like, before they'll discuss ras kata, they have to circumambulate Govardhan Hill and chant 64 rounds. Well, these are the kind of, circumambulating Govardhan is good, chanting 64 rounds is good, but these are the kind of things that cheaters do to make it look like they're really something, like they're really qualified. You see? A lot of people hide behind knowledge. They'll hide behind the dress of knowledge, the dress of a sadhu. They'll hide behind things. So they put out this, or Śrīdhara Mahārāja used to say, too busy to be Krishna conscious. You have too much service to actually be Krishna conscious. See? That's another kind of a cheating. It's not really service that you're doing, and you busy yourself in so many things which you think are service, but are actually not service. See? And somebody offers you the opportunity to be Krishna conscious, you have no time because you're too busy doing your service. Such a plane is also possible to fall into. Self-deception, cheating.
In the Krishna talk, he was saying, from last Baladeva Pūrṇīmā, he gave an example of in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a verse where Nityananda is chasing Mahaprabhu into the garden.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's there, and there's been Bhaktivinoda, Bhaktisiddhanta, and Srila Prabhupada that I know of that have commented on Chaitanya Charitamrita, and nobody says anything about that verse. And the verse is that after the Jagannath goes inside Gundicha temple in Rath Yatra, after he enters Gundicha, then they close the doors. Jagannath's going to take rest. Mahaprabhu and his associates go to a garden nearby. I searched out this garden. Baladeva Pūrṇīmā has a temple there. Ayatota, I think it's the name of it.
Ayatota, yeah.
It's called Ayatota. And now it's just a temple like this with coconut trees and stuff. But before it was just an open garden with mango and coconut and different trees. So the devotees were so fatigued, one by one, they were like collapsing. And Mahaprabhu just keeps going and going with the kirtan. Pretty soon nobody is in the kirtan, everybody else is just on the ground passing out. And Mahaprabhu keeps going with his ecstatic kirtan alone, and he's dancing madly through the garden, and Lord Nityananda is like following him, keeping him in sight, And all of a sudden Lord Nityananda looks, and the verse says, Nityananda looks and Mahaprabhu turned into Radharani. Lord Nityananda stopped, turned his head, and went away. There's no comment on that. I mean, that's like, there's comment about Mahaprabhu showing his Viṣṇu avatars, there's Mahaprabhu showing Sadbhuj, and all that. And this, you would think, oh, this is such a high, this is such a high thing. Mahaprabhu is turning into Radharani. This is like right at the top, right? Lord Nityananda goes there, sees that, turns around and leaves, and nobody comments about it. Because there should not be invasion of the Lord's privacy. And that was obviously intended for nobody but himself. Lord Nityananda glimpsed it, refers later to others what he saw. But no Acharya gives any commentary and goes into it, because there's no need to go into it. There's some respect of the privacy. So every aspect of Krishna Lila does not need an inquiry, and it doesn't have to prove itself and logically align itself in all of these things. Yet enough information is there about the various Leelas and Rasas so that we can not fall into what's called rasa bhas, or this sahajya type of imitation of rasa. But the way these people take it, they think they need to ask a question on everything, and everything has got to come up with an answer. So this in some places may be good. Just as it says controversy should not be avoided, philosophical controversy, it's good, it makes one strong. But at a point, philosophical argument is simply a waste of time also. So it's both things. It's not to be avoided, but then you have to know when, okay, hey, enough's enough. This is going in the wrong direction. So inquiry is there, but at a point, it's none of your business. Krishna has his own business. This is to be respected. Okay, let's finish up.
Ananga Manjari is the manifestation of Baladeva, through whom he is represented in Madhurya Rasa. The science of Rasa does not allow Baladeva to enter there with his own abhiman, mood. Therefore, we are told he has to go there as Ananga Manjari. The laws of Rasa are of such fine importance. The extensive management is the department of the Yogamāyā potency, but that is in a second-hand position. The first position is that of Kṛṣṇa, and in a secondary position, helping Krishna Lila from outside is Yogamāyā. Devotee. Didn't Balaram return to Vrindavan and perform Ras Lila with the gopis? Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja. Yes, but that was with a separate group of gopis. The interpretation and inner understanding of the Goswamis is that Balaram performed the Ras Lila externally, but within his heart, he was making Ras Lila of Kṛṣṇa. His position and personality is such.
So that this part here can, as you mentioned, a few things about Guru and Balaram. So Balaram is performing Rasa Lila with gopis, but he's, how to say in English, he's put his own ego in the back, and he's representing Krishna at that moment. He's not enjoying for himself. He's accepting the service of the gopis, and he's offering that to Krishna. You follow that? So the position of guru is supposed to be like that. The guru doesn't accept offerings to enjoy, but he accepts offerings on Vyasa Puja Day or daily, whatever it might be, as a representative of Kṛṣṇa, on Kṛṣṇa's behalf. He accepts the service that is offered to him. And he accepts it on Kṛṣṇa's behalf. Therefore, Guru is considered a manifestation of Balaram, because that's how Balaram acts. He does not act as the enjoyer. He passes on as a transparent via media to Kṛṣṇa. Ekala Ishwara Kṛṣṇa. Adasabra Britya means in Bengali, there's one supreme enjoyer, not even two. Everyone else, Adasabra Britya, are the servants of that one supreme enjoyer. That one supreme being is Kṛṣṇa. And the first expansion of Kṛṣṇa Balaram also takes the position of a servant of Kṛṣṇa, not an enjoyer. There is only one enjoyer, actually, and that is Kṛṣṇa.
He is faithfully dedicated wholesale to the 10% satisfaction of the center. His very constitutional position is such that he cannot do otherwise. That is his intrinsic nature, to put everything towards the satisfaction of Kṛṣṇa. So the key for service to the Master, Kṛṣṇa himself...
Wait, what? The what? Keeper, what?
That is his intrinsic nature, to put everything towards the satisfaction of Kṛṣṇa. So the key for service to the Master, Kṛṣṇa himself, is in his hand. And that Master is an autocrat. But he says, don't be jealous of me. I'm your friend. You are all my own, so don't be afraid.
Go, Brother. Enough?
It's never enough.
Ho gaya? Time, cut. Any question?
As you were talking about questioning how it's not proper to after certain limits, it's been like it's been said in the material world, like as you said, example like in the relationship or different situations, business, that you know the limits when not to ask about something.
Right.
But in the spiritual world, like we all know about about the rasa, we're not supposed to talk. Like we know certain things as the rules, but in the general, like how do we know that am I being...
The only experience is our teacher, by our experience. And you have two types of experience. Your direct experience, that's when you queried, you found out, you realized, oh, that was a little bit intrusive into the privacy of Guru Maharaj, or that was like, no, that was beyond, I'm asking a question beyond my level. Adhikari, I should be asking questions more concerned with this level than this level. It's out of proportion. So your direct experience, learning by experience. Of course, sometimes we're slow. We have to repeat the same mistake many times before we finally get the lesson. But experience, that's the direct method. The other is the indirect method, and that is by paying attention to what's going on around us. You may see that in somebody else. Like, I'm on a morning walk with Śrīla Prabhupada. I think it must have been the first day after I took sannyas. And now I'm on every morning walk. If I want to be, I'm on every morning. So we're on the morning walk on the roof, and Prabhupada is talking about scientists, and I raise some devil's advocate point, and I say something, and he just turns around to me and just lays waste to me. You fool! I'm just like, oh. I knew sannyasi with a big dunda, and he says, you're a fool. And he's like, oh. If he just said it twice, I'd have died, And I can't even, I could. I think I've told Giri some of the details. And I'm just barely hanging on for dear life until somebody else becomes even a bigger fool and says something else, and then Prabhupada turns to them, and I'm like, out of the loop, keep your mouth shut. That was the lesson. I didn't need to do that twice. Come and say something, right? And what I said was, in one sense, was very valid. I was representing science. But basically, Śrīla Prabhupada was in no mood to address the devil's advocate, these stupid arguments of the scientists were irritating him. He's in the threshold, beyond the threshold of truth. And these idiot scientists are wondering if there's a God. It's just like, at a point, it's just like, enough's enough. Can't tolerate this science, these ignoramuses, We're talking about people like Prabhupada, Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja, Bhaktisiddhanta, etc., Bhaktivinoda, our guardians and acharyas. They're in the world of that experience. And they are relating that to us and engaging us in that world. And so, yeah, they have to be very tolerant, but at a point, everyone has their limit. Even great souls. Like, that's enough. No more stupid questions. And you hear there's hardly ever questions after Prabhupada's lectures. He never says, are there any questions? He used to take some questions. The questions were generally so stupid. He said, no more questions. And so the only time you could ask questions was sometimes in his room or on what we called the morning walk. Would open up. Room conversations and the morning walks. Not in classes. Because Prabhupada would give a class, say about Guru Tattva, and then somebody asks a question, why Kṛṣṇa wears a yellow dhoti? He's like, the question has to be about the class, But, or even weirder questions than that. So there were just no questions. No questions. There was a book called Perfect Questions and Perfect Answers. Right? But most of the times it was stupid questions and perfect answers. It was like that. Yeah, so we know by our own experience, when we, you know not to do something when something goes wrong a couple times, and it's like, okay, got that. And by the experience of others, hearing from others, watching, seeing others. I don't know how. And that, who that was that spoke after me was, I was in charge of BBT for many, many, many years. Tall and thin guy. Who was originally with Siddha. I forget his name. But how he walked up right after me, seeing me get the sauce, to repeat the same kind of thing. I don't know. He wasn't paying attention, because I saw like, whoa, boy, just keep your mouth shut around here, Another time, everything was going on, and I was the odd guy out, and I made all the flower arrangements for Prabhupada, all of them. Got the money, made all the flowers, set up this not Vyasa Puja, just Guru Puja for Prabhupada. And right in the middle of it, the rose petals, when he was sitting like this, cross-legged on his Vyasasana, the rose petal, you couldn't see him. All you could see was from the body up. Just, there were so many roses and rose petals offered, and so many garlands. And suddenly, and we're all standing right here around doing a big kirtan in Hyderabad. And suddenly Prabhupada stood up on the Vyasasana. While standing up, he grabbed a fistful of rose petals. And I was standing right there, and he just leaned over and threw the whole bunch of rose petals on me, and then he sat back down. And everybody was just like looking at me like, what made that happen, But he was paying attention. He understood it was this whole long story. There'd been problems there, and then suddenly everything was organized, and you could see by who was moving around who was responsible, and that's how he reciprocated. So I just wanted to vindicate myself a little bit from getting chastised. I also got blessed. Both are a blessing. Our Guru chastises us, that's a blessing. That's a little harder to find, the sweetness or the mercy in that, but it's true. But also for that reason, new devotees are never to be chastised. Young disciples, weak people, they're never to be chastised. When you love somebody, you'll give chastisement. Understand? When you don't say anything, you're fed up. right? That means gone with the wind. Well, if the guru is there to chastise, that is a form of Krishna's mercy. It's not, it is just always there to bless and pat on the head and help you get a new computer or something like that. That's Jai Guru Dev. Or take you on a surf trip or go to Vrindavan or some of the perks, you know. It also means to get some lesson, to get shouted at sometimes. And there's one story, Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja was very upset. And he told all the devotees, get out, leave my ashram. I do not need anybody here. And he was already 90 years old, blind, and could hardly walk. And so everybody just took off from his room. And then he went on patrol to make sure everybody had been ousted from the temple. And devotees were just hiding in different places. So he came downstairs, and there's a pillar, and there was a girl there named Aniruddha. And she was the wife of Badri. And she's a little bit frail person, and she's newer devotee. And Śrīla Mahārāja is coming down, and the place is like a ghost town. But all of a sudden, this one girl moves, and she's behind a pillar. Śrīla Mahārāja picks up his tee. He goes, "Who is there? K-Bolta," or whatever it is in Bengali. You know, he's shouting, "Who is that?" Yeah. You know? And then she comes out from behind the pillar. She goes, "Aniruddha." And he goes, He knew she couldn't take the heat, you know, so he just let the fish off the hook kind of thing. You know, who is it? You! But if he was shouting on her, she would just die or something, you know. So he can't take the heat, so he's looking for somebody else. And then gradually he went back to his room, and then one by one all the devotees came, one by one giving their obeisances, saying they were sorry. They had messed up the offering, actually, very badly. By accident, but by somebody's inattention, not caring, just taking it as a job duty. Something happened, and the offering was spoiled. And Śrīla Mahārāja was very disturbed about that, why that just happened. So, but that was mercy for everybody, and anybody involved in that, including that Aniruddha, could probably tell you the story, and they're not ashamed of the story. It's the chastisement is also a symptom of the Guru's love for us. When he says nothing, it's like you pass some guy in the street and he's smoking cigarettes. You don't say anything. Why? Because you don't care about it. This guy's an idiot. But there was one Swami from India. You know the story? He came to the West. He was a very old man, and Baladeva Pūrṇīmā was his name, and he was in not London. Where was he? Amsterdam. And he was on a street walking with some disciples, and he walked by a pub. A pub is a bar, a drinking place. It's all glass windows. They have nice tables. People sit right in the window. The street is here.
Smoking.
And they're smoking and drinking. Each man has a beer, and they're smoking a cigarette. And Baladeva Pūrṇīmā walks up to the window and takes his stick and goes, "Ta, ta, ta." And the people look out there, and he goes, "Stop your smoking! Take Namam!" And they're just like, "Ooh, what's that?" So he cared about the suffering living entity, so he wants to. So if we care, we can try to help people. Sometimes it's chastisement. If we care, then we try to show the path to people who are conditioned in the material world. We try to show the path. You can't make them enlightened. You can't make them a devotee. We used to discuss it. How do you make somebody a devotee? You cannot make anybody a devotee. You cannot make them a devotee. You can only show them the path. And to show them the path, you should be on the path. Right? And then you show the path, the whole thing, not just what you're doing, but the whole thing, the ashram, the philosophy, the books, the devotees, prasadam, the deities. You show them the path. But then it's their choice. You cannot make them. And that's the problem when people are born devotees. It means born in the families of devotees. I don't know what the rate is, but I would say it's probably pretty high that they're not devotees. Pretty high that they're not devotees, particularly in the Western country, where family means very little. They're not devotees. But in India, family means more, so you kind of go with the family, and it would take a long time to find out that a son or a daughter or something was not going to be a devotee. It takes a long time. They make that decision when they're 17 years old in the West, and phew, they're gone, or earlier even. So, what was my point? What was it?
Yeah, you can't make somebody a devotee.
Yeah, you cannot make somebody a devotee, you can only show them the path. So, in our projects, here we do some more traditional preaching projects here. But in Moki, it's very, very different. Moki runs, like, you have the business of the ashram, and then we're just showing people the path. What you're interested in, we talk about. What you're not interested in, no problem. And we're trying to show them a lifestyle. And it works for many, many people. It's made some of them become devotees. And others think very seriously about life and what they're doing in their path, in their life, how they live, what they eat, the way they raise their children, what the heck is going on. So we're just showing people the path. And in Mexico, it's the same way. You're just presenting a nice lifestyle of Krishna consciousness and make it interesting for people. And people come and share with them the philosophy, the knowledge, and things like that. So that's the best any of us can actually do. It's just you can do it in different ways. And you can show the path by defeating the path that the person is on. To show them that you don't know anything in this world. Scientists don't even know who they are. Why should I listen to a man who doesn't know who he is? I mean, the basis of life is who are you? And you don't know who you are, then why do I care? What do you have to say? You're a madman. You don't know who you are. That's why I'm getting a GPS system. I always know where I am, who I am. Yeah, but I don't know where I am. But when I have my little GPS system, it'll always tell me where I am. That will help me understand who I am, right? So if a person, Srila Prabhupada used to say, if you don't know what day of the week it is, you don't know the date, that's a symptom of madness. What's the date today? Okay. No crazies here. How many days left till Janmashtami?
7 days.
7 days. 7 and a wake-up. Yeah. 7 and a wake-up. Yeah. Okay, we're very intelligent people here. Very, very vastly learned. And somebody else comes in, yeah, I work for the space program, I put satellites. Who are you? I don't know. Then what? What's the use of all your knowledge? So real knowledge means who you are. And when you know who you are, everything happens after that. Because that is in connection to Kṛṣṇa. So. Shri Baladeva ki jai.
Shri Guru Mahārāja ki jai.
Did we finish? Yeah. We finished. Haribol.
There was another prasadam puzzle one time. I was in Las Vegas, and I came back, and the devotees were bewildered because they'd taken a pot of prasadam milk, and then they'd taken a new carton of milk and poured it into the prasadam. So they mixed the boga with the prasadam, and they didn't know what to do, whether it was prasadam or not.
What would you have done?
Honored it.
Heat up the milk and sit down, right? So, but here's the thing. There's a saying, okay, then that's like an oversighted accident, and it's prasadam, because the prasadam is more powerful than the boga. Prasadam cannot become the boga, boga can only become the prasadam. Right? But there was another thing, it was like, what is that? Oh, about the Ganges. I came across a sloka somewhere in that library that says, if a stream enters the Ganges, it becomes the Ganges. But if a stream leaves the Ganges, it's not the Ganges. Like the north and south branch of the Kaveri are both the Kaveri. But if it's split here and went its separate ways, two rivers, then one of these would not be considered the Kaveri. And I don't know how the sadhus would have figured that out. When you go to find the origin of the Ganges, or the origin of the Indus, or the origin of the Jamuna, there's a lot of things taken into consideration. And whoever found these places, I don't know. And how everybody knows. But it's not as simple as follow the biggest river, or something like that. It's not always. It breaks down to get so small It has to do from how high and how far. And ultimately, there must be some spiritual revelation. Is there a map that shows everybody where the origin of the Ganges is? No, it's just described, and then it's someone's revelation to get there, and they did get there. Vyas got there, and others after him, and it's been passed down. But there is no map that says it's so many kilometers from Josimat and this and that, not from the ancient world. So it has to be, the origin has to be somebody's revelation. Origin, someone's revelation. It's not clearly on the Vedic map where it is, but rishis went there, and by their realization, they understood where these origins are. So the same is true for other things, like origin of the jiva. There's some vague indication about it in the Shastra, but it's only after Bhaktivinoda Thakur there's such an elaborate explanation or detail by revelation of the origin of the jiva becomes manifest. But that's true even about the Ganges River and such things. It's only generally said it's there. Well, then who went there and discovered it? Who's to say so? Who are they? Who could lay that claim and make it so? Who could lay that claim? Where's the birth site of Lord Chaitanya? When there was another place saying, no, we're the birth site. We've been here for a couple hundred years. And he figured out, he goes, no, this could not be it. They lost the birth site, so then they made this new place and said, yeah, this is the birth site. But it's not. Then he goes there by his direct experience and by revelation, he finds Mahaprabhu's birthplace. And who is Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Can you tell us who he is?
Yeah, well, again, back to Sri Kṛṣṇa Samhita, which he, as you pointed out, he wrote before even meeting his guru. And there he says, personalities like Vāsudeva and myself have seen all these things clearly through our samadhi.
Yeah, so who he is? Bhaktivinoda is an intimate, eternal associate of both Kṛṣṇa and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's who he is. Details are later, but that's who he is. Not a person, conditioned soul of this world. He's come here to bear the gift. And he brought so much of it, he was passing it out even before he found the people that he was supposed to pass it out to. Means the Sampradaya. He was just in India. He was a magistrate. He was district magistrate. What's that, DA or DM?
DM.
He was DM. In the old days with a big fancy uniform, and a big, you've seen that thing, he's sitting up there. He was judge. He could sentence people to death. In those days, the district magistrate was the judge. And he sentenced some people to prison. And I don't know, did he sentence anybody to death?
I don't know.
No, but we know to prison though,
Yeah.
right? That would become, what's his name?
Bishakishan.
Vishakishan, some cheating yogi. Yogis beware. And there were dacoits in Vrindavan, and he used his power as a district magistrate of Puri to bring in the army and do away with the dacoits.
King of Puri as well.
King of Puri.
He was sent to
He had him sent off to prison.
Andamans, yeah.
Andaman prison. Who was Bhaktivinoda? Beautiful question. Better than what if there's a number we don't know about? So you go, what?
Boy, that's it, yeah.
Okay. Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Sri Baladeva ki jai, Sri Kṛṣṇa ki jai, Govindaji Gardens ki jai, Vaishnava ki jai, Go Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.